Welcome back to the Renngineering YouTube and podcast, and welcome to another Ren Builds episode. This is my 2015 Porsche Cayman. In the last few episodes we've looked at what I've changed about the car so far, but we focused on the back end. So we looked at the exhaust, wheels, decals on the back, deck lid, but we didn't look at the spoiler. We're going to pick up on that. In this episode we're going to start looking at the front of the car, some of the things that I did that were slightly different to other people potentially, and how I didn't spend too much money trying to do that. So if that sounds good to you, then stick around.
It's like Christmas. It genuinely is like Christmas. I don't know why, because it's just a painted bumper, so it shouldn't make any difference, should it? But anything that takes effort and skill from somebody else, it just feels like I appreciate their time and their effort. I didn't take this to a Porsche approved body shop. The closest one to me is about an hour away driving wise. At that point, it would have been a case of costing it up and all the rest of it. So there is an element of risk attached to somebody, trusting a job like this to somebody that you don't know that comes off recommending. Hello, you. Got a visitor. So I trusted it to Everyway Services. They're local to Southampton, and everything so far has been perfect to deal with. However, it is still wrapped up and I haven't seen the finished product. So, did you want to do it with me? Did you want to do it with me? Yes? Should we unwrap it? Come on then. Let's unwrap this and see whether it's any good.
So this is the GTS or Sport Design front end. I bought this from Brookspeed. They're a relatively local race team and car sales company, and they basically do repairs and sales for the local area, which is fine. This they make race cars, obviously, so they had a Cayman that they obviously stripped down. It was a GTS, and that's where this came from. I basically bought all these plastic parts off eBay or from Thiel, how you pronounce it, that's in Germany, and ordered some of those bits that I really couldn't find anywhere else from Porsche themselves. I found Porsche to be cheaper than most of the aftermarket companies, probably because I get a trade rate at the dealer, so that's quite good. Other things that probably don't get noticed very often, I fitted mesh. That's relatively common. You can get a Zun Sport set for this, but actually I had the whole bumper off, and as I was building it up, as you can see a couple of minutes ago, it just made sense to try and do it at the same time. I've also fitted a little GoPro mount under there. So if you've watched the previous episode of my Porsche story, so me driving around Europe, driving around the French Alps, a lot of those low shots, they got really close to the ground. That's where it's mounted, and it's really subtle. It tucks out the way there. So that's a 2-second job when you got the off anyway. It was worth doing. Again, I don't know what it's like in the rest of the world, but in the UK, you can have a sticker front plate as long as it's got the correct sizing, correct distance between each letter, and it's got the BS standard mark in the corner. So I ordered one of those, cut to the right size. It is ever so subtly a complex curve. You've got it sort of arcing and going around that way, it goes around that way. These things, especially this reflective material, is not compliant. It doesn't kind of bend and shape in the same way that a wrap would. It's a pain in the arse. And then getting it dead straight in the center of the car is also, you wouldn't believe how much of a difficult thing that is when you've got one chance of doing it, or you've written a thing off and you've got to start again. So that took a lot of time. There is not a single bubble in this thing. I took probably more time over fitting that little number plate than I did most of the other jobs, because it's just one of those things that it's fresh paint as well. Can you imagine if I peeled it back off and it ripped half the paint off? just wasn't didn't bear thinking about it. But this bumper came with front parking sensors, parking distance control. I don't have PDC on the front of this car. On the back I do. So what I did is had them fill those in, and they plastic welded it in and smoothed it, and you literally couldn't tell the difference. It's amazing. Some of these parts, as I said, they're second hand. This particular bit, this small piece around here, the trim, that alone is I think 450 quid, 450 pounds, something like that anyway, just for this single trim here. So it's a bit of a watch out really when you're doing this. Some of these trims aren't too bad. These side ones don't cost too much money, but this one piece was more than most of the other the sort of framing parts. What else to speak about? There's some plastics that go behind the bumper that connect to there's a bulkhead that sort of sits about here. They weren't too expensive, they were relatively cheap. And what you can do typically with a GTS front end, if it was on a GTS, there would be a third radiator. Then at that point when I was doing this, I was considering whether I add that third radiator and then reflect on the fact this is a road car. It doesn't get super stressed. I've never had a concern about engine temps, engine coolant temps or anything like that. So it was really if it's not broke, don't fix it situation for me. So I didn't bother fitting that third radiator. It's not going on track and getting thrashed all the time. So that extra, I think, is about £1,800 in the UK to buy the kit, so the radiator and the piping, and then obviously you've got to drain and bleed the whole system. It just wasn't worth it for me. So that kind of sums up this. The only other thing I'll mention is the lamps, the LED daytime running lights. They are exactly the same as the Boxster. So if you've got a standard Boxster and you're thinking about doing this job, you can do that and just basically take your Boxster daytime running lights off and fit them to the GTS front end. There is a difference. So the GTS front end comes with smoked lights, and obviously the ones you get on the Boxster do not come with smoked. So yes, they'll fit. If you're going to be pedantic about it and you want that kind of smoky look at the front, there is a difference. What else can you see? I had the originally chrome because it got PDLS, Porsche Dynamic Lighting System, and it comes with headlight spray washers, and they come on the standard Cayman. They come as chrome, which just looked awful. I thought, and I hated it since the moment I had the car. It just looked like two boils stuck on the front of the car. So I paid £90 for two little plastic caps, and I had them painted as well. And it's so funny, isn't it? It's those tiny little details. You know, it probably cost me 150 quid by the time I paid to paint them. But actually, when you stand back and look at the car, massive difference. Not covered in the original What Am I Doing to My Car episode, I think 2 episodes back. But as we're here, I'll mention it anyway. And that is this. This is the 1963 Heritage emblem hood badge that you can get now on the Sport Classic, the 992 Sport Classic, and the 911 ST that's just come out. I spotted that and was like, I've got to have that on my car. There's also another thing that I will show you in a second. But what it's done is it's introduced a bit of complexity. And I think I mentioned it in the end of the last video, is that the wheels have the coloured crests. They don't make those you can't order them coloured crests on satin or rim centre caps. But I particularly wanted them at the time. Then I've since replaced the hood emblem with the orange, because it's the Heritage version comes with orange black. That doesn't match the rest of the car, which drives me nuts. Love this though, really good buy. Love the fact that basically no one notices it. Love the fact that no one cares other than me. Those sorts of tiny little details, that's what I want this car to be. Basically OEM, but then when you start walking around, you start noticing those tiny little details. And the fact that that happens, I feel like I've nailed my brief, because that's exactly what I wanted for the car. Now, these things, I'm going to get comfy. They are a source of amusement for everybody in the US and versus the UK. Everybody has kind of pointed these things out and gone, why have you got orange side repeaters? I've mentioned this loads of times, both on the channel, on Niners, I think, Niners Unplugged. I think possibly even Michael Barth, when I was on the Porsche Cool podcast a couple of years back. This car and its reference points. I love really early Porsche, so that sort of 60s, 70s era. Think about the 72, 73 RS. It's, they're white cars. They've got side orange indicators. They've got kind of like Fuchs wheels, and it all looks kind of retro. Well, this car can't look super retro, But I definitely wanted to pick up on some of those things. So yes, in the States, most people will swap these out and go, I've got the European ones. I've gone completely the other direction. That's why these are orange. I originally bought the 991.2 versions, which are LED, and they're flush. Tried them, didn't like the look. It felt like I'd kind of gone too far the other way, gone too modern. The fact that these are just capsule bulbs and they stand there, they stand proud ever so slightly. Yeah, I love it. I think it's one of those details, again, that I personally really love. And that's the thing I would say to everybody, that anyone that's watching this, if you're designing and kind of thinking about modifying your own car, march to the beat of your own drum. It's not for you. You've got to drive it, right? You've got to love the thing. If you've picked a modification, even if no one else gets it and it's just you, you've got to drive it. Who cares what anyone else thinks? That's the point. So these are staying. I'm never getting rid of them, and I love them. Now, these side decals. I absolutely love them, and I mentioned them before in that previous episode, but I didn't get a chance to show anyone. So yeah, the side decals, they are, these bits here are matte black, the Porsche Irish green kind of script in the middle. That's the standard classic Porsche logo, and that is in an Irish green but in a gloss. So you got that contrast between matte and gloss, and I really, really love that. Getting these fitted was a pain in the arse. I think I mentioned design stuff online previously and how great they were. I ballsed it up basically, and there was, and I got a replacement, but there was a couple of tiny little I think there's one there. You can't see it probably on camera, but there's a tiny little dust dot on that. But you know what? To try and get them lined up across, so that gap here is, you just can't see it out of camera, but out of shot even, but that kind of leading edge, to try and get a balanced spacing between height from the bottom of the door and off the back of here, and get the whole thing lined up and then laid down without a single bubble or kind of dust or anywhere. It's pretty tricky to do, to be fair. You'll notice on the front, or you might be able to see just out of shot there, towards the leading edge. On the standard decals you can buy from Porsche, they don't flush fit to the edge. Originally when I fitted them, I did that, and then I kind of had another think and just was like, actually I quite like the gap. But then I flowed it around right to the front of the arch as well. So very happy with those. They're one of the kind of standout things. Again, people don't notice the fact that the Porsche logo is green, not black. But again, it's all that subtle stuff you just don't notice. Now, such a silly thing, isn't it? Those are, they look like aluminium, plastic, but I think they're really cool. It's that or a plastic one, and I probably wouldn't have bought that unless the gasket hadn't started degrading on the previous fuel cap, and it was something that I think got mentioned at a service just before I replaced it, that actually the rubber was degrading around the inside of the fuel cap. So rather than replace with the standard one, I went for the Sport Design package version of that, or Tech Equipment, whichever it is. Okay, so the Spyder spoiler, or GT4 lower ducktail. Love this thing, really cool. It really sort of gives that sort of slightly more aggressive rear end. Get asked all the time where this is from. It's not an original OEM part. Frustratingly, and you can see here, this edge here, I've tried to do the best I can with that gap. It is one of those, they all do that, sir, situations. You can align them as best you can, but it's very rare to find one that is absolutely spot on in terms of the gap between the leading edge of the lower edge of the spoiler itself and the top of the bumper. It's really annoying for me, somebody that kind of finds all those things particularly frustrating. I've had the back bumper off a couple of times to try and play with the standoffs, the kind of all sorts of bits and pieces in there, and never managed to get it absolutely spot on. And I don't think it's anything to do with the spoiler itself, because every time I look at another 981, they all suffer from basically the same problem. So big shame, but I would say that part I got off eBay. It was a punt. It wasn't overly expensive. I think it was probably £450, I think. But that came shipped from China, and that came shipped painted from China. I would say the paint match is, it's absolutely spot on for something that wasn't done with the car next to the actual spoiler itself when it was being painted. Yeah, they nailed it. So the quality of the paint's perfect. There were no defects. no runs, nothing. It was absolutely amazing. So, and it's got this lovely glassy finish, and it's always resisted scratches and stuff. What I will say, the fitting underneath is not the same as the GT4 or the Spyder version. The Spyder underneath has a kind of black plastic trim. This comes kind of actually purpose made for the non-GT product cars, which is great because it literally just bolted on and bolted off. There are other people that have done this already. Test Drive Scotland would be my reference in terms of fitting this. Loved the great job that he's done over the last sort of couple of years in building up how-to videos. Same with Auto Amateur, lots of reps for that. Lovely channel. And there's a chap, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he's from Australia, and he does complete disassembly builds of his entire Boxster, and has done a great job of documenting everything, every clip, every trim that guy's picked up on. So they're kind of my 3 references. So if you want to go and check their videos out to see how you actually do this, that's what they did. But for now, yeah, that's the Spyder spoiler. So that's it for this episode. Thanks ever so much for watching. It's a bit of a shorter one, just wrapping up the front end and some of the slightly different things I've done that other people may not have. I hope you've enjoyed the episode. I hope you enjoyed seeing what's happening with this car. And we're getting close to kind of getting to the point now where you're up to speed. The interior, a ton has happened to the interior. So that's the next episode, so stay tuned for that. If you haven't subscribed already, please make sure you do subscribe and like this episode, and drop me a line, info@reengineering.com, if you want to be on your Porsche stories. If you're a potential sponsor for the Ren 550 and I don't know, there's anything to do with that build from scratch, I'd love to hear from you as well. If you've got any feedback, please let me know in the comments below, and I will see you next time. Thanks ever so much for watching. Don't forget, actually, the podcast is available and hit number 69 in the UK automotive podcast chart last week. So that's climbing the ranks pretty quickly as well. So big thanks to everybody for watching. Thanks ever so much for your kind words so far. Hope you're enjoying the channel, and I'll see you next time. Take care for now. Bye-bye.